Hello and welcome to ShePack. Today I'm joined by Amy Looper, founder, CEO, and author of Leading Motherhood. For those of you guys who are not familiar, it is a professional development program for women who are building out their careers. She's also created a self-guided book that is amazing, by the way, that takes you from the delivery room to the boardroom. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss the myths of motherhood for ambitious women. Amy, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Lenise, for having me.
Yeah, super stoked. Okay, so I had the opportunity to read the book, and I just felt it was so spot on for those of us who are already mothers. I felt it to be inspiring and a beneficial guide for those of us on their journey to really identify what our purpose is. So while I don't have enough time to cover everything in the book as much as I want to, because there's so many good things, what was your motivation when you decided to create this book?
Yeah, I had gone through burnout after many years of all that trauma that I write about in the book. And I wanted women to realize that, we can get out of high achiever mode and give ourselves the ability to really feel again, reconnect with emotion, give ourselves compassion, and not have to feel like we have to be superwoman 100% of the time.
It's so true. It is one of those things. It's these expectations that we tend to put on ourselves, especially like you said, like our overachieving self. And I think this book talks to a lot of those pieces. Now, if I were to take a step back, let's talk about some of the success that you had in your career, specifically the success you had in sales. Can you give us more an overview of the success you've had there?
Yeah, sure. I kind of was a sales girl like from the beginning, and so I naturally went into SaaS sales, healthcare, IT back in the day where we were taking doctors off of paper and putting EHR systems into hospitals and clinics. And then that path really weaved into cybersecurity. But during that whole time, I was like, winning a lot of president's clubs. Vista Equity was kind enough to give me a BMW at one point in my career. Like really fun things had happened. And then we started having kids. I was promoted to sales leadership right before I had my firstborn. And then, I had bought into that myth, one of the myths we talk about in the book. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I was like, I really stepped into the myth that I thought I had to give up a leadership position that required me to travel when I had Ava, my firstborn. And so I took a step back and I demoted myself. That track got me into the tech industry, working for a VAR, then later in cybersecurity. So it was a fun path. You just kind of weave around those places in motherhood and shift as necessary. But it's been a really fun time building Leading Motherhood over the last few years. So I stepped out of corporate in 2020, just knowing that I had the skill set, right, of sales. Like it's an amazing foundation. And so now I've been taking that and building my own business.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do want to go back because you did say you received a BMW for achieving quota and bonuses. And I'm just saying, for those that are listening, incentive plans, I would love to have a BMW as part of my incentive. So kudos to you on that one. I would anticipate though, because you started talking through of how you started to move up this or having this success track. You've had your daughter, you've gone through tech. What do you feel like some of the sacrifices that you found yourself making in order to maintain that success and the associated benefits that come with it?
Yeah, I mean, beyond the normal sleep, right? I think we all sacrifice that. The sacrifices made there that really included, it's really kind of that energy management where you feel like you have to go 110%. And then that ended up in burnout. And so it was, that sacrificed my health. It was probably contributing to a lot of anxiety and depression, always feeling like I was bending over backwards. I always tell my clients, I said, if we're professional people pleasers, which many of us in sales and marketing are, because it gets us to where we are in our careers. But personally, what happens is you start bending yourself around the spaghetti, like a spaghetti noodle around a fork. And I kept doing that in my career. Like, okay, I feel like this is, a lot of pressure on our marriage or pressure in our family. And so I'm going to give stuff up and pivot because I can do it all. I'm superwoman. I can't, there's nothing I can't do, right? That whole idea. And sometimes we fall into that trap. So I kept doing that for many, many years. And I would say that really started to degrade my nervous system. creating a lot of hormonal imbalances, creating, probably longer postpartum issues like PTSD after traumatic birthing experience, like holding on to the energy for longer than necessary. So it breaks down a lot of stuff in relationship and health.
Well, and I'm glad that you break that down, because I don't think that people may correlate some of those associated after effects by, you talk quite a bit about like people pleasing in your book as well, and trying to deviate from that, and just even understanding the impacts, because while we're wanting to do a great job, we want to be acknowledged for that. For those of us who are very competitive, we want to keep driving, but you have to start listening to your body and understanding what could those negative effects be, especially as you start to navigate from maybe things that even you want to do. You're listening so much in what people maybe have vision for you to become or to do, that you could start losing that. And it could have some actual internal effects on your body. Now, as you start to reflect on your journey, what advice would you give to others who may be in a very similar situation, especially when there's this huge value around what I'll call golden handcuffs and these financial awards? What's your recommendation to them?
It was funny because I was just talking to a client this morning about the golden handcuffs. We kind of came from the same journey on that, same company. When companies dangle the carrot of really amazing comp plans, when when you know that people are able to have this pretty fat expense account in sales, and you're like, okay, I can see the opportunity here to really create some amazing income, serve my clients, have the resources I need to thrive as a sales rep or a sales leader, that can be very attractive, but you really have to do some digging into your own personal value set to make sure that you're just not attracted to that and that be your motivator, because that's very temporary, right? The comp plan can go away, your sales leadership team can go away, everything can change overnight. And so you have to really be centered and grounded in on your own personal vision. That's step one, really understanding, what do I really want, right? What kind of impact do I want to create in the world? And then the second step is, okay, got it. Now, what are my personal values? Like, what do I really stand for? What, is, now that I'm a parent, you really have to go through this exercise after parenthood, because things change. Even after baby 2 and 3, you might change perspectives. And so getting back grounded on, wait a minute, what is my top 3 or 4 values, and making sure that you can see evidence of that, or at least talk to maybe other, employees of that company to make sure the culture really matches. Because otherwise you just won't be intrinsically motivated to show up in your best self. It'll be really hard and feel like a pull to be a match in that particular scenario.
Yeah, I love how you say reflecting on your personal values, and would love to just hear any examples that you had. When you were saying that, I was thinking of, throughout my career, I've had my own 3 personal values, and the way that I've applied them is number 1 for me is family. So if I don't have that flexibility to show up and also be able to be with my kids or take them on a field trip, it's not going to work out for me. That's my number 1 priority. 2, I love to learn. So if I'm in a position where I can continue to get better and learn new skills, I get bored really easily. So to me, that's table stakes. And then 3 is, obviously, your girl actually loves to shop. So it has to be at least financially good enough for me to stick around. I don't always get to check off those boxes, but to your point, it is identifying what those are and how you apply them. What about you? How have you applied those values in a real world example?
Yeah, family is my number 1 too, right? It's I knew that when I gave birth to those babies, wow, everything just changed and you guys are priority. And keeping that family unit together, as marriages and different things like that change and ebb and flow, and that's just natural, really, really being committed to family. And so I love that you share that, Lenise, too. I totally understand. Second for me is impact. If I can't make impact, if a leader is going to get in my way, not allow me to have autonomy to kind of just flow and do my thing and create, then it's not a good match. So I've got to be able to have the ability to create impact and influence. And third is a lot. I realized in my journey now as an entrepreneur, I thought I was always money motivated. I'm not at all, which is so crazy because I used to be like, sell the comp plan and do all the things. But I really realized it was about really being in generosity and being in help, helping other people, like really helping somebody up, being empowering, and that kind of a thing. So yeah, life changes, your values change. So you might change in a year and don't be attached to it. Just like go with it.
I never thought of it in that sense of, I always had my 3 values. And to be honest with you, I feel like when I had created those original 3, I then added a 4th one, which was fun. And sometimes I don't get to fulfill that one, which is okay. But now talking it over with you, I'm like, I created those values, I think when I had maybe my first daughter. And I kept it as I started adding on more children. But now I love how you said it because it's even making me think that, hey, do I need to revisit those values? Because some of them, they may have changed. So you actually made me think of something. And I would encourage others, like write it down and then revisit it. I don't know, maybe a couple months or years, whatever you feel it works best. But I love how you said that because it's actually, I'm like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. I need to do that too.
Yeah. It's a leadership principle, right? Because when we're in connection with that, we start to lead with intention and we're leading our lives versus letting life just really take us by the wayside. And so I realized after many years of being in that kind of reactive mode, right? We had 2 kids, surprise kids, same husband, but we had 2 kids that were like, wow, okay, God really wants you to have kids. Got it. And so it was just very reactionary after that. And I had to really go, wait a minute, this isn't working. Get ahead of it. And so now we even do couples planning, and some of you listening might do this too. Get together, like have a date, go away from your house, do like a staycation or something or whatever for a weekend with your partner, with your significant other, and really get into, wait a minute, what's our vision together as a couple? What are our individual visions? What do we want to go after? And then work down that list, the values, the priorities, where we want to go financially, yada, yada, yada. But it really helps you stay in sync so that you have that North Star to really refer back to, because there's no doubt that life will try to hit you a million different ways in a year. It just does,
I love that. And I'm going to repeat it for our listeners. Couples planning. I literally took a note because I'm like, okay, my husband and I have a date night tonight. And guess what? He doesn't even realize it. We're going to do some couples planning where we're going to talk about our vision and the list of values. I was like, oh yeah, that's a really great idea. If I think back to your book, there's a piece in it that I pulled out and it says, I had to tell my VP of sales that I was not planning on having kids and that they could count on me as a stable, dedicated employee. This created the do whatever it takes mantra to climb the corporate ladder. Now, you were just talking about your kids. How do you feel, or why do you feel compelled to create this mantra?
Well, I remember that moment. I was in Las Vegas at a hotel meeting with him. I was actually on a personal vacation. He's like, I got to meet with you. And then he's like, hey, we know you're up for promotion and all these things. And I was like, okay, yeah, like, what do you want from me? Like, let's get this done. I'm not having kids. Like, you can count on me, And so that, looking back, I was like, oh, wow. Look at how much I was just giving up what I truly wanted for people pleasing. Like, hey, you have my soul company, give me more BMWs. I'm good. Like, let's go, kind of that hustle culture. Right. And you're like, yeah, whatever you need. And so, it really became a new way of living where I was like, wait a minute, check yourself, get back into really what you want, get back into your heart, get out of the logic and all the head stuff where you start to say, I got to do all these huge, amazing things. You can do those for sure. But the motivator and the intention behind it, at least for me, when I started to do things like I do now, which are very mission driven, impactful, helping people transform their lives, you can make a lot of money doing that. And it's a lot better than trying to be in this fear and scarcity and just holding on. And I hope my corporation likes me mode, right? It's a totally different way of being.
Yeah. Well, even like as you were saying that, you were on vacation and he reaches out to you and he wants to meet now. And we're like, yeah, we'll meet. And it's like, how often do we do things that are similar to that? And it could be even something as simple as you had designated time on your calendar to put yourself first, go to the gym or go for a walk outside. But then somebody comes in and says, hey, I need to have a conversation with you right now. It's, it makes me think, why do we always feel like we have to accommodate other people's schedules? And what do we really have to lose by saying no? And I'm curious for you, like, how do you feel like this impacted your decisions and your overall well-being?
Oh, I gave it all away, right? I literally gave away my power on a golden platter, and so, and also if you're catching yourself doing that, there's no guilt and shame here. I don't even want that to even be in the air. But if you are doing that, and you're having a hard time shifting, ask yourself, how are my kids viewing me right now? Is this behavior that I want my daughter to exude someday in the workforce? Oftentimes when we ask ourselves that question, we're like, oh yeah, yep, no, shift, because I don't want my daughter to, think about that. In fact, I was taking her to a play date earlier today. Boundaries came up for some reason. I don't even know how, but we talk about these leadership things, even though she's 9. But it came up in the car and she's like, oh, Mom, you have no problem telling us what you want. She's real sassy. And I go, well, yeah. I said, honey, because I want you to be really clear about what I want, what I do want. And I don't always get what I want, but I'm really clear because that's a loving thing to do. And she's like, are you sure, Mom? And I go, yep, it is. So, like teaching them these kind of things early on will only help them be able to really stand strong when someone tries to come in and abuse their time or their wishes, Well,
I think it makes a huge difference though, because, both of our daughters are 9, and having these discussions with them earlier, I think is going to help prepare them, especially when they have that sass, which I love because my girls have that like sass and the fierceness. And I think it's just empowering them that it's okay to have these conversations. I was just doing another podcast with Lori Dunn. And she was telling me that earlier on in her life, her father had told her, whatever your heart's desire. And that built this motivation in her that she could conquer anything in the world. If something, if there's a huge hill to climb, whatever my heart's desire, I can go after it. And I love the same thing for you is like identifying that when we do become pleasing, we're giving away our power. And there's power in just understanding that what the implications are and just having these type of actions and then instilling that in our children at an early age, just like they're doing now in the education system of growth mindset, which is a totally different topic. But I love that you're having those conversations with her.
Yeah. And I love that our kids are starting to learn this. I mean, our generations, if you're Gen X or millennial, I'm kind of like right on the border, like we just didn't learn that. Right. And unless your parents were really forward thinking in that area, but oftentimes we just didn't grow up that way. So I love that now in society, we're all trying to instill these leadership skills because you have to have them.
Yeah, I agree. I love like some of that advice that you had given too is like, how are my kids viewing me? I think that makes it's less about what we think about ourselves and the pressure that we put on ourselves, but more looking for the people that we love and we care for, our children. How are they viewing myself if I make these actions? How else, I guess, how can women navigate these pressures of do whatever it takes? What other advice would you have for them?
The big part of what I had to learn too is energy management. We can talk about mindset all day long, and I do that a lot, but it is more than changing your thought system. Because if you've had the same thought system for the last 30 years, 40 years, whatever that looks like, then you can't just change it overnight. You're going to have to recondition that behavior, and you're going to have to break through the things that conditioned you to be that people pleaser, as an example, or, self-sabotage comes in, you're going to have to really get ahead of minimizing the risk for that to happen in the way that you're leading your day, leading your energy, leading your way. I talk a lot about being, right? How we show up in your way of being is huge. And people often ask me, Amy, especially new clients, I don't get this being thing. What's this whole being thing? And it's like, well, it's how you show up. Like, are you being loving today? Are you being in contribution to others in generosity? Are you thinking on the lower end of the energy scale, which is in fear and scarcity, guilty, shame is the absolute bottom. And when you do that, people feel that distance and they're like, I can't figure out why I have this block with this person. You're in a boardroom or something and they're like, I don't jive with that person. Why is that? Well, it's because they're not showing up in a way that is melding, meshing with you, right? Or of a higher vibration where they can really be seen and you hear them because they're confident. So I think it's really important to just check that.
And I never thought of that because I think we've all been in situations, whether it's the boardroom or, it could be at, cafeteria, whatever, where you're just not vibing with somebody's energy, but then realizing how you're showing up. Now, we can't always control other people, but I think that just being aware of how we can minimize our own risk, to your point, and identifying how are we feeling today, that sense of being, because it is very reflective of how we show up to ourselves and then how we show up to other people. So something definitely for all of us, including myself, to consider. Now, if I go back to your journey and, clearly you had this conversation in Las Vegas, you were on vacation, with your manager, and it was a discussion of, you getting promoted and, feeling that safety that, hey, I won't have kids, and doing whatever it takes, like we discussed. After you were then promoted, you found out that you were expecting Ava, your first baby. And so tell us about your experience in planning for motherhood, specifically what others don't really prepare you for.
Yeah. So I would say in preparation, a lot of people will go to the ends of the earth, read every baby book, every podcast, everything, right? There's a lot of information out there right now. And I'm sure there's a lot more now than there was like 9 years ago, 10 years ago, But I think for me, I never really read all the things, I didn't read all the things, but I prepared like normal. The thing I would say, looking back, I had a C-section. I was on bed rest. I was on bed rest at week 24, I think it was, very early. We thought, in fact, I was traveling to California to Sonoma to work with a brand new rep of mine. I had just gotten promoted, and they're like, okay, you're pregnant, not a problem. We're going to figure this out, right? And so I traveled up there and I had a really scary episode. I thought I was losing the baby. I had no idea. My husband had to come up and fly up to save me pretty much. And I had to be on bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy. I mean, talk about oh my gosh, mentally, that really impacted me. At the time, I didn't know. You just kind of go with the flow, right? But looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder I had postpartum depression. Like major, I was still booking deals for my hospital bed as I was in there for 10 more days later on before I had a C-section, because I was like, I got to keep my mind busy. This is driving me nuts. So my point is release expectations. I think we said that earlier. Release expectations of perfectionism, release expectations that things have to go a certain way. If you want to have a birth plan, okay, but even my mentor, who is Dr. Shoshana Bennett, the leader of perinatal mental health, even she is like, I tell all my clients to tear those stupid things up, because the thing is birthing never goes as planned. And if you go in thinking it's going to, you really can set yourself up for major mental health struggles down the road if you just are so stuck on it going a certain way and it doesn't. So just be open and be flexible, and that's really an energy thing too. It's flow. It's letting flow come in and going like, okay, I know that I'm going to be taken care of, and whatever happens is supposed to be divine for my experience.
I think you surprise yourself by the things that you're able to achieve when you go through these life experiences. You mentioned you were on bed rest for, at week 24. And how long did your term go to? Did you go full term, 40 weeks?
We went to 36.
Oh, still, that's a lot of time.
It was a long time.
So no,
it was a long time.
Well, but still the productivity that you can achieve in your bed. So my third daughter, I got really sick. I call it the Kate Middleton syndrome, where I'm just deathly ill for all of my kids. And, it was 2 months that I spent in bed, and it was the time, thankfully, I don't know, unthankfully, but it was the pandemic too. And it was all my work was done through bed, but it does being in bed all day, even if you get to have some type of productive call or whatever it is, you're not feeling yourself. And I think even being stuck in bed, it has a lot of effects to be secluded in the same room And mentally, it just starts to break you down. And you had mentioned, even after baby, postpartum depression, which is incredibly challenging for those of us that have experienced it. And I'll take it further because I love how you say it in the book. Postpartum depression will go away by itself. False. That is a myth. Yeah. So I love how you break that down. Could you share with us how you first recognized its presence and what impact it had on your overall well-being?
Yeah, I kept just trying to breastfeed, and both of my kids had tongue ties, which at the time of my first one, I had no idea what in the heck that thing was. I took it out on myself, of course, right? Being a perfectionist and all the type A things that personality brings. Trying to breastfeed your baby and then you can't, it's not working. You just keep driving and pushing and driving and pushing, right? It's that kind of energy towards it. But it eventually, like by month 2.5, I was so sleep deprived. I actually had an episode of hallucinating. Like it may have been psychosis, I'm not sure, but I know that it was hallucinations from just being so tired trying to do this breastfeeding thing, which I still had to supplement with formula, but I just was trying to hold on to this idea, a story in my head that I had to do it this way, right? It's so silly looking back, but we just try to do these things for the right reasons, but also, looking back, I'm like, wow, I really put a lot of pressure on my body for no reason. It wasn't working, not a big deal. And my child's fine and we got her tongue tie fixed, but that moment of hallucination of literally like seeing things on a couch that weren't there, and really just like being anxious and irritable. And at one point, I know my husband came in when I was putting Ava down to bed and he's like, I think you need a break. Like he could just tell, like I was just fried, and so that's helpful. And also, I didn't ever let him help at night either. I always tried to strong arm everything and had that FOMO gene of like, well, I got to do it. I'm the mom now. I have to be, this is my value now. Right. And so all those things contributed to really having a lot of, I would say, postpartum anxiety with her. And that lasted for several months. I did go on medication for just a short time. I didn't like it. I was like, this isn't for me. And then we ended up going through a lot of other things in life. So I just kind of like, just did a couple therapy appointments, felt like it got better, but it showed up after my second born as PTSD after having a traumatic birthing event. And so my point is you've got to do the work, and the work I didn't actually do until I became a founder. And it was in 2021 that I did leadership development work. And it was very transformational, deep emotional work. That's what broke me through postpartum depression. That was the thing. I had to do all the processing of why I didn't feel good enough, why I was people pleasing, and all of that deep childhood wound kind of psychological stuff that was the thing that helped me shift totally out of it. The rest of it was a Band-Aid.
Yeah. But I think, kudos to you because there's so much pressure as women that we put on ourselves. And I would even say society puts on us. I remember with my first, it was, I was shamed if I did not breastfeed my daughter. And let me share with you, by baby number 3, unfortunately, baby girl got breastfed for about a week. And I was like, look, it's just not for me. And I'm okay with that. So people can get over it. She's fine. My husband didn't get breastfed and he's brilliant. So, it's some of those pressures though, that we do put on ourselves. Yep. And I think another piece that you hit on was it's okay. Get help. I think when we start to put that pressure on ourselves and we don't reach out and allow others to help us, we cannot help ourselves. And being able to take that time to have that reflective period and seek out that help so that we're investing in ourselves again. It's like that whole airplane situation when the air mask falls down. We have to give it to ourselves before we can give it to other people. And you start to realize that you got to give yourself that air mask so that you can thrive and the people who are around you and that you love can also thrive. So I think too about, you have all of these personal things that are coming into your life, and you were working the entire time, right? Yeah.
I took 12 weeks for each baby, but in the grand scheme of things, we think that that's a long time here in America. It's nothing, and America has the worst parental leave ever in the whole world. It's really
So
terrible.
true.
I think if people can take 6 months, do it. If you can take longer, do it. Like, why not?
Yeah, no, I agree. I always I'm always jealous of my European friends or even like my Aussie friends and even Canada. I think they get like a
Yeah,
year
they
off.
get a year.
It's
I think
something
it's 2
that we
months
should
even, I
all,
think. Hmm.
yeah, it's insane. Although I also I do have to say, like, for me at least, like, I took 4 months off, and by the 4 months, I was like itching to get back. So, whatever your flavor is or your preference. Earlier, you had mentioned about family trauma and obviously anything, in addition to having children and any complications and, postpartum, PTSD, all those things. You talk about the family trauma. And can you share a little more on that? And how you coped between what we discussed, postpartum, family trauma. You were also, after the 12 weeks, you went back to work. Tell us more about that period in your life.
It was a heavy one. But I know now that I had to go through all that to do what I do now. So it was a gift in a different way, but after having Ava, so I had Ava, my firstborn, and then a year later, my father-in-law had just really become exhausted of being a caregiver. He was an amazing leader in IT for many, many, many years, turned caregiver for my mother-in-law who had Parkinson's, but he ended up choosing to end his life. And so 6 months after that, my mother-in-law had passed away, and then we became pregnant with my second daughter and went through all of that. So it was just a really heavy period. So why that was so heavy was, when you're grieving something like suicide, it is just such a big grief process because it brings up things that you just cannot even imagine. There's just so many unanswered questions. So the grieving process is extremely heavy for everyone. And then, it happens to my parents or my in-laws. So, my husband's going through this process too, right? And he's like, nobody prepares for that to happen. And so it just really left a lot of kind of emotional I was on my own, emotional, neglectful times. It was just like I was on my own trying to raise this baby, keep my career, trying to figure out what is hubby thinking and doing, and is he okay, and all that stuff that just happened. So yeah, it was a big traumatic period. But what I would share with people is if you're going through those things, just know that you're going to just keep walking through it each and every day, even if there's days where you're like, I can't go anymore because the emotions are just stored or heavy or whatever is happening to you. And really just, surrender to a higher power, your faith, whatever you align to, just really surrender to that place of guidance to get you through that time because it's really designed for you. There's so many skills that I just later on realized I had from that resilience and grit that it took to get through that. That is just irreplaceable. And so all of those times we can always look back and say, okay, wait a minute, that was really, really a shitty thing that happened. But what was the blessing? Okay, I can take this and now I can go help other people in doing something about it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to as we start to progress in our career and we have children, life just continues to throw its curveballs. And, I think those things end up, in many ways, causing us to reflect even more, even if we didn't want to reflect. It really makes you appreciate life and come into this moment of, okay, I need to have something that's going to be more memorable in my life that's going to serve me. And Amy, I again, I would encourage everyone again to get the book because I think your story in itself and your career path, there's so much we can tap into. But I do want to pivot to your business, Leading Motherhood. Can you share with our audience insights into the exciting opportunities that you've been crafting through Leading Motherhood?
Yeah, so I have, taken all the deep work and all the programs and all the things that I've done over the last few years, and I package that all together, and that's what Leading Motherhood is. It's really this beautiful transformational journey for women to get out of the chaos, get out of burnout, get out of chronic stress, and find their happiness, find their place of peace, their fulfillment, their purpose. Women that come in, they're usually coming in after a big life transition. Maybe they've become a parent or a caregiver. Maybe they've gone through a divorce, like whatever it is, like the big life event has opened. Maybe they've gone through a layoff, a lot of tech layoffs, right? And they're in a place where they're like, I feel lost. I feel stuck. I want to find clarity. I'm not really thrilled with what I'm doing anymore, and it's taking up a lot of my time. I want more autonomy and flexibility. I don't know how to get there. And so we, over a 12-week period, take them in a very I just wrap everybody around with big fluffy blankies and just carry them through this period of transformation to really just help them get recentered and rediscover their heart. Because so many times we've been out there in the doing and the achieving, and we have lost complete connection with why God has actually called us here and shed our light. And so I want to help everyone turn on those beautiful lights and shine them brightly, but doing it in a way that is in alignment with what they're supposed to be doing. And so it's amazing to do this work. It really is the biggest miracle of my life. And yeah, we help people all around the globe. So you can, look at my website and find out all the information on that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more, because I'm loving these fluffy blankets, and I think we should all be wrapped in them. What can we expect?
Yes, I'm hoping this next year to have an actual conference. We'll see, TBD on that, but the Leading Motherhood conference. I'd love to bring you all to Scottsdale, wrap you in fuzzy blankies and light some candles and have an amazing transformational experience, But it first started with the book, then it started with the programs, and there's a little bit of online, there's a little bit of group, there's opportunity for one-on-one, but it's really just a journey into your highest potential. Nobody in the program is there to just do a checkmark leadership program. It's not like that. People are there because they're like, I know I'm meant for amazing impact and great things in this life. I just need a little bit of help getting to that next level and figuring out how to break through some of the obstacles that are in front of me. So it's very a unique journey for everybody. But at the end of the program, we've got, women that are, reconnecting with their husbands. They're going out on, Sarah, one of my clients, she goes out now weekly with her husband who owns his own business. She's in cybersecurity sales, doing amazing things, 2 kids under the age of 5, and they're going golfing, and they're spending time with the family. And she's learned how to, take that 24 hours that we're all given. We are all given 24 hours in a day until we start to think. Because when we start to think, we start to second guess ourselves. We start to procrastinate. We start to get distracted. And if you're not in your top level of just leadership and emotional management skills, then that's where that pull of our day goes. And we're like, oh, well, I didn't get to do that. Well, why didn't I get to do that? Well, I wasn't centered in on my intention. Oh, because we weren't leading our day with an intention. And we weren't taking emotional, physical, and spiritual breaks to help our nervous system stay regulated. We were in the roller coaster, so there's a reason why there's high performing millionaire, billionaire people running 5 different businesses and having healthy families. It's because they do this kind of work. They learn how to really manage how they're showing up in their energy.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we only get 24 hours in the day, and how you decide to use that time and making sure that you're investing in yourself, you're stepping into your power and going through this transformational period. That again, seek help. Don't do it alone. There's so many things that I can continue to go down with you, Amy. In closing, I want to ask you my last question, which is, in a world full of possibilities, what mark do you dream of leaving as a trailblazer for future generations of empowered women?
I would say to really be true to what you want and not be afraid to feel those feelings. When you feel your core, really say hey, this is your intuition, say this is not really where you need to go. Then ask, yourself, ask God, where am I supposed to go? Lean in so that you are living life on purpose and not be distracted by anything else.
I love that. I love that. Amy, I appreciate you and encourage our ShePack listeners to check out Leading Motherhood. I will also make sure to add a link to access Amy's website, the book in the show notes. When you have that event in Scottsdale, Arizona, I will be looking out. I will probably be the first to sign up because that's a beautiful area. And again, we love warm, fuzzy blankets. So as we wrap up today's session, let's remember that in supporting one another, we amplify our strengths and we break down barriers. Go out there, champion for your dreams, and empower your peers, and continue to shape a future where every woman realizes her true potential. Until next time, see ya.